front. Or
Only blockchain.
only the blockchain part, not the small one. I can't seem to sharpen this thing a lot. And I thought it's my eyes that is a bit blur.
The left side seems to be less sharper than
Yeah, strange.
And I was like, yesterday,
Really? Maybe it's my left eye.
Projector.
Yes. Welcome. My name is Chris. Hi. Oh yeah, you're right. The left side seems to be a bit blur.
Yeah.
That is very strange. That is very strange.
Can I ask for a new projector? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Let me take some.
All right. Anyway, my name is Chris, and I'm from the sunny island of Singapore, just south of here. And I have 25 years experience in the technology firm. I have started 5 companies, 5 startups, and my latest startup is in artificial intelligence. And that's the fun part of things. And today I mentor about 15 different companies in many different areas, including urban farming to artificial intelligence to blockchain, many different type of technologies. In fact, one of the fun technology that we're doing now is brain control. That means using your brains to control machines without any voice or that's really cool. You have to see that. So,
Do you have any samples?
any samples I can show you the next time around. Actually, it works. We do have a demo, that you can. Yeah, that you can. I don't have it now, but that using your mind and you think you can find the crosshair of your games moving. That's really cool. Scary as well.
So are you the one on that photo?
Yes, that's me.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a strange thing that's only my photo is a bit blurred because it's on the left. Everything on the left is blurred, never mind. And I did my degree in New Zealand. Yay! Any Kiwis here?
I'm from New Zealand.
Hey, great to see you. I did my degree in Waikato. And I have a first class computer science and mathematics degree. And I did my PhD in Singapore. Okay. So today's agenda is I want to talk about what's a blockchain, what's it all about, what does it do? And do not fear this, but I want to talk about the mathematics behind blockchain. And I think this little bit, although it's not too mathematical, but I think everybody needs to understand this. So whether you're in the business, finance, and as all of you are in the audit, you really need to know what's under the hood. How does it really work? Maybe it's fake. And then, at the end of that, I want to talk about how blockchain can be used. And I'm going to try this later on. We're going to do some discussion groups among this group here. And I'd like to hear from you what you think. So, first off, what is a blockchain? Well, how did it start? In 15 September 2008, the financial crisis happened. Many people lost money and many companies collapsed, just like the Lehman Brothers. Now this is important because 1 month later, exactly 1 month later, in 31st October, Bitcoin was born. 1 month after the collapse. Now, I don't know whether it's a person, a group of people. Is he really Japanese? Is he Australian? We don't know, but he goes by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, of course, that's a Japanese name, but is he really Japanese? Nobody knows. Up till this day, 2018, 10 years later, nobody knows who published the white paper for Bitcoin. And because of this paper, the entire blockchain, cryptocurrency, everything came into being. Whoever this person is, he must be a billionaire by now. Because of the entire Bitcoin economy and cryptocurrency economy, 80% is owned by the top 15 people. 80% of value, and that's almost like $15 billion, owned by just 15 people. Could he or she, we don't know, be one of them? But that's where Bitcoin was born, just 1 month after the collapse of Lehman Brothers. That white paper described a very interesting technology that will support global economics of Bitcoin. And later on, after Bitcoin, there were many other coins using the same underlying technology. So blockchain is the underlying technology for all the cryptocurrencies today. But then that same technology can be used for other things too. Many, many other things. And we're here today to talk about those other things. We're not talking about Bitcoin. We're not talking about cryptocurrencies, but we're talking about the other things. Same technology. So what did that technology address? Now, in the 1400s, Gutenberg invented the printing press. And that closed the information gap because people now could have access to papers that were formerly written by hand. So that changed things. It addressed the information gap. And then the engine was invented, the motor was invented, and that addressed the power gap. No longer do you need thousands of people to do manual work, but you now have engines to do that same work. And that changed how things were made. Manufacturing came into being, factories came into being. The next revolution was the internet revolution that happened in the 1900s, specifically 1995, 1996, that period. And that closed the knowledge gap. That made it easy for all of us in this room to understand things. So what does blockchain address? Dum-dum-dum. In 2008, it addressed the trust gap. The trust gap. And I think the person or people behind the white paper for Bitcoin could see that the global financial system can collapse because of just the greed of a few people. And that's why the whole Bitcoin and blockchain revolution began. They wanted to take away the power from the centralized governments, the banking cartel, and put it in the hands of everyone, you and I. Unfortunately, it created a different problem, which I shall share later on. So trust, okay, on the left side, unfortunately, the words, I'll read it to you. Trust is core to any business. So the first line there says, I need to trust you in order to transact with you. Otherwise, if I give you something, how do I know I'm getting back my payment? So I need to trust you in order to transact with you. That's one of the underlying core of this whole blockchain thing. The second thing is trust is the fundamental currency of commerce. Way back when, in our forefathers' days, when I gave you a chicken, maybe I wanted you to give me a duck. I don't know. But at least there's trust in there. So what if I give you a chicken and I'm not getting back a duck? Maybe I get something else. So even that kind of barter trade, trust is important. And the last line there says, trust is delicate. Delicate, because trust can be broken easily. It's fragile. It's very fragile. So this whole thing about trust is fundamental to blockchain. It is not the technology, it is not the Bitcoin, but it's all about trust. So far so good? Yay? Now at the heart of blockchain is the ledger. Now I know all of you are auditors. Some of you are financial auditors, some of you are process auditors, but the financial guys would know the general ledger. The ledger is important. So the ledger is at the heart of blockchain. As you know, you can create entries in ledgers, but you can also tamper with entries. And that is why all of you exist today. Because ledgers can be tampered with. Processes can be tampered with. Without this tampering, maybe there's no job for all of us here. So you need to trust, but you also need to verify. Right? So this blockchain has a ledger at its heart. A ledger that can be audited. A ledger that can be seen and read. But the ledger can never be tampered with. And that's what I'm going to share with you a bit later on. The mathematics of the ledger. Why it can never be tampered on. Alright, here comes the hard part. But I think all of you need to understand this hard part. Okay. And here's where I need to go back to this. Alright, so this is a longish definition, but I want to share with you something called the SHA 256. The SHA 256 is a cryptographic algorithm. This goes into deep mathematics, cryptography. So what happens is, on the left, if you put any string, for example, my name is Chris. This is a text, a sentence, right? Put it into a hash function, and out comes a gibberish string of numbers. And these numbers are not numeric, they are hexadecimal. That means you have A, B, C, D, E, F as well. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, F. So it's hexadecimal. So on the right side is what we call a hash key. Any text, anything you put in on the left, goes through the function, comes up a number on the right. Now, no matter how many times you put the same sentence through, you will always get the exact same number coming out. So in mathematics, this is called deterministic. You can't change it. You put ABC in, you will always get a number out, and that number will always be the same number. So far, so good? All right? No, that's not the hard part. All right. I'm going to show a little video, and using this video, you will understand this.
Measure away. But before we get started, we need to take a look
Can you hear?
at this thing that we call a SHA-256 hash. Okay, and a hash, this is one of them right here. A hash looks like a bunch of random numbers. And essentially what it is, it's a fingerprint of some digital data. And it just so happens it's a fingerprint of whatever I type in this box. So if I type my name, Anders, into this box, you see that the hash has changed. As a matter of fact, it changed every time I typed a letter, right? So I'm going to go back to, so it says Anders. Okay, so this is the hash of the name Anders, all lowercase. It starts with 19EA, right? Okay, so if I delete that and I go again, type Anders again, you can see it starts with 19EA, the same exact hash. In that sense, it's a digital fingerprint of this data. Whatever data is here, every time you type exactly the same data, you get exactly the same hash. And I can type anything I want. So you can have nothing, like this, you know, E3B0, that's the hash of nothing. Or you could type tons and tons of stuff. As a matter of fact, you could put like the Library of Congress in here and you would get a hash. And the interesting thing about it is, regardless of if there's a tiny amount of information, no information, or the entire Library of Congress, you're always going to get a hash that is this long, this many characters. You're not going to be able to pre-guess what this is. You kind of have to put the Library of Congress in here to figure out what the hash is, but you'll always get exactly the same hash regardless of how many times you put exactly the same information in.
So far so good? Can you hear that? Good, eh? All right, I'll continue because it'll go one more step deeper into this.
So what I'm going to do is extend this idea of a hash into something that we're going to call a block. All right, so let's take a look at a block. So this is a block, and it's exactly like the hash. It's just that that data section I've broken out now into 3 sections. One called block. This is just some kind of a number. This is block number 1. A nonce, which is just yet another number. We'll go into what that is in a second. And then just some more data, just very similarly to the way that we had it before. However, the hash of this, which includes all of this information up here, is down here, and it begins with 4 zeros. You see that? It's a relatively unusual hash. You know, most of them are not really going to start with 4 zeros like that, but this one happens to. And because it does, totally arbitrarily, I'm going to say that this block is signed.
All right, so I just want to pause here a little bit. If you can see the hash number there, it begins with 4 zeros. That's very rare. When your hash number, which is so long, magically has 4 zeros in front, it means it's signed, cryptographically signed. You can only get this 4 zeros if you put in a special number here called the nonce. So the trick is, what is the nonce that will give you the 4 zeros? You got it? What is the nonce that give you the 4 zeros? It's not easy to determine that. This is called mining. Okay, you got it? Every time people tell you, oh, blockchain has a lot of mining, this is the mining. To look for that magic number that will give you the 4 zeros. You got it? Okay, let's continue that. It sounds simple.
Okay, so what would happen if I were to change any one piece of this information? Let's say if I were to type something here, right? The hash is going to change. And what's the chance of, if I type letters, this hash is going to start with 4 zeros? pretty low. It's probably not, right? So let's see what happens when I do that. I'm just going to say hi. Oh, look at that, right? This hash does not start with 4 zeros, and so the big background here is turned red. So now you know that this block with this information in it is not a valid or a signed block, okay? And that's where this nonce comes in. This nonce is just a number that you can set to try to find a number that fits so that this hash starts with 4 zeros again. All right, so how do we do that? Well, let's start with 1. Does that start with, no, it's 3, 2, 7, that's not 1. So let's try 2, FF now, 3, 4, 5, 6. You get the idea. Like I could sit here, there's one that starts with a 0. I could sit here all day typing these numbers to try to find one where the hash starts with 4 zeros. And this process is called mining. Let's do it right now. Now it's checking all of the numbers from 1 all the way up. Whoop, there, now it's stopped at 59,396, and that one just happens to hash out to something that starts with 4 zeros, and it satisfies my little definition of what a signed block is. Okay, so that's a block. Now,
So that's a block. And this is the process of mining. Now, that's only for the word hi. You spend quite a long time mining the right key to give you the 4 zeros in the beginning. Imagine if that's a book and not the word hi. It's going to take even longer. Now you begin to understand why there are people in the world that owns tens of thousands of computers just to do this kind of mining. And some of the biggest miners in the world today are in Iceland. Very obvious, because the heat is dissipated by the cold. And also Outer Mongolia. It just so happens that some of the early miners were Chinese, as well as Icelandic. I don't know why. So, let's continue with this interesting story, because this is a block. This is a ledger entry. It could be a transaction. It could be a purchase. But this is a block. Okay, here we go.
can you tell me what a blockchain is? It's probably just a chain of these blocks. Well, how do you put them together? Let's do that. All right, so here's my blockchain. I have block number 1. It has some kind of a nonce just like before. There's some data area to it, but then it has this previous. And here it's a bunch of zeros. Let's roll forward. So this is block 2 and block 3 and 4. This blockchain has 5 blocks on it, right? The previous here starts with 00 AE8, right? Is this number, AE8. And then this previous, B90 is this one over here, B90. So you can see that each block points backwards to the one before it. You remember that the first block over here, there actually is no previous, so it's just a bunch of zeros. It's actually just a fake number. Okay, so just like we did before, what happens if I change some information here, right? It's going to change the hash of this block and it's gonna invalidate it, right? Well, let's try that. So I'm gonna type hi again. Sure enough, that block is invalid, all right? Just as we assumed. But what would happen, I'm gonna fix that now, we'll go back to something that worked. What would happen if I change something in this block, right? It's going to change this hash, but this hash gets copied up to this previous, so it's gonna change this one too, right? So it should break both blocks. So let me try typing hi in there, and sure enough, right?
So, as you can see, it is this link which chains the blocks together. Got it? So the block number 5 has a previous, and the previous is this guy's hash. So if this guy fails, it copies that over there, so this guy will fail. So that's just 5 blocks. Now, in a journal, in your general ledger or your ledger, you can change any entry, you can paint over it, and that's done. But in a blockchain, you can't do that. The moment you change something here, it invalidates every other block. And then if you do, you will have to mine this one, and then you have to mine this one in order to get the right number. Now, as you know, mining is costly. If your chain is 1 million transactions long, it will take you centuries to finish mining everything, you know? Remining. So remining is a real pain. All right. So far, so good? Right, let's continue.
So we can go back as far as we want, you know, to some point in the past and break that block, and it'll break all the blocks since then. Everything before is still green, but this one is red. So if I wanted to, you know, change something in this blockchain, I could just go over to block number 5 right here. We could change it. I'll put high. And then we could remine it, you know, and pick a different nonce. We'll do that right now. And we could essentially alter the chain. So we've done it. So that we should be good now, right? All right, well, what happens if I go back in time to here and I break it here? Now I have to mine this block, which will pick a nonce that makes this block hash out to 4 zeros. If we can find one. Sometimes it takes a while because it's got to run through a lot of them. There it is. It found one at 138,000. All right, but this one is still broken because although this one starts with 4 zeros, adding the 4 zeros with different stuff up here still makes this block hash out incorrectly. So I also have to mine this block. All right, and that takes some amount of time. That one was a little bit quicker, and then I have to mine this block to fix it. All right, so what we're showing here is that if I go and change this last block, all I have to do is remine this block. If I go way back in time to back here and I make a change like that, I'm gonna have to mine this one, this one, this one, and this one. So the more blocks that go by, the more blocks in the past that we are, the harder and harder and harder it is to make a change. And so that's how a blockchain is going to resist mutation, resist change. Okay.
So that's the word resist mutation. Right, all of you who are auditors, this technology resists mutation. Now and this is not the end of the complexity. What happens now, I'll stop the video here. What happens now is that this is one chain in one machine. Now what happens in blockchain technology is that you're going to distribute this same chain over hundreds of other machines, duplicated. So now, not only do you have to change, if you want to tamper with the ledger entry, you have to mine this one, and then you have to mine everybody else's chain. Because all the chains are synchronized. All the chains are synchronized. An invalid chain will be rejected by the other machines, rejected and overwritten. So the whole technology is such that if your chain is invalid, it will be overwritten. So inside the blockchain technology is an inbuilt auditing mechanism. It's an inbuilt auditing mechanism. The moment there is a tampered entry, all the peers will look at it, says it's invalid, and overwrite it. So that means a hacker would have to hack every single machine at the same time, simultaneously. Because if the hacker can hack one machine, everybody else override that. If the hacker hacks 3 machines, there are another 100 that will override it. So it's tamper-proof because the hacker will have to hack all the hundreds and hundreds of machines at the same instant. So that is the challenge. So far, so good? All okay? Yeah.
What of if you make a genuine error and you need to make the correction?
Okay, very good question. Now, this is how it will work in your case. You've made an entry. It does the mining, the 4 zeros are achieved, and you sign it. It's valid. That gets copied to everybody. Then you realize, oh no, I need to do a reversal. I need to do a credit debit. You do the next transaction as a new block. Let's say you now reverse $16. That new block will have to be remined, rehashed, and joined to the rest of the chain. So far, so good? Right, yes.
In the previous slide, you said the hash number is almost unique, meaning there could be a case of duplications.
Yes. Okay, let me just reconnect this. Mathematically, using mathematical theorem, that theorem says that it cannot achieve 100% unique. All right. But in all practical sense and purposes, that is like one chance in trillions. Okay? So in general, it is unique. Oh, what happened here? Did I touch something? Because it's not.
Computer is not sleep.
Oh, it went to sleep?
Yeah.
It did go to sleep. Okay. All right.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah,
so
go
if you're
ahead.
trying to beat this system from a fraud standpoint or a corruption standpoint.
All right.
If you enter in the incorrect information from the beginning, then there would be no way to identify that information is correct at the end point.
Yeah.
And so if you were trying to steal money and you entered in the incorrect information from the beginning, then there would be no way to identify it at the end.
Right, okay. Very good question. How did people steal Bitcoin today? And the North Koreans are truly one of the best at this. As you know, there's an embargo and sanctions on North Korea, so they cannot get real cash. They actually have professional armies of people to hack Bitcoin. Now, let me answer your question. The thing about blockchain is that the chain itself is immutable. That means once it's set, it is set. You can't change that. Right? However, if somebody hacks Will's account because somebody knows that his password is his birthday, then that person masquerades as Will and then starts doing transactions that are illegal, like stealing Will's money. Okay, so that is one disadvantage of a blockchain, is access control. Anyway, it's back to how you control your own passwords. So that's one downside of things. The chain itself is immutable, can't be changed. But the user account can be hacked if you don't protect it. So this is how money has been stolen, cryptocurrency has been stolen today. They didn't break the chain, they broke your account. Okay. Next step, and that really comes to the answer to your question, is if you put in valid transactions, but in the real world it's fraudulent, then entries after that are fraudulent. But guess what? At least when you look into the chain, you know who did it and exactly what time it occurred. No one can erase the footprint. Alright, so in that sense, fraud can still happen, but nobody can cover their tracks.
Yeah, but no one can also detect it because it's all.
Correct. If it's hidden in the meaning, then you can't detect it. So the good news is the auditor's job is still safe. But now, trust is managed in a different way. Very different now. So as an auditor in the new world, you have to think differently. You now have at your disposal an engine that is immutable. That means cannot tamper with. It is there, you can't tamper. But the way you audit will be different, correct? You are now looking for other kinds of traces. So when a human being wants to do a fraudulent transaction, he or she can still do it. Except that it's very hard to cover the trace. So that it's up to you to discover what that trace is. Okay? So far so good? Alright? So how is blockchain used today? Now, the anatomy of a blockchain use is as follows. You have nodes, which are essentially machines that are peers. Each node will have the chain. And remember, I say that users access the chain through the node. So if Will doesn't protect his account, he can be hacked. Not the chain, but his account can be hacked. So I know friends whose Bitcoin wallet are stored in very old computers with no Wi-Fi and only a wire connection. And he pulls out the wire every 5 minutes. Alright, so he hooks the wire in, does his transactions, pulls the wire out. No Wi-Fi at all. So guess what? Old computers are very good. It's very hard to get into them. So nodes. Nodes doesn't mean that it has to be your laptop. It can be your finance server somewhere in the US, paired with one more in Scandinavia, paired with one more in South Africa, paired with one more in Brazil. So each of these are nodes. Each node will have one chain. People access the chain through a node. Okay? The blockchain is therefore distributed. Every time a set of entries are made, they are put in one block. That block is then attached to the chain. So you can have as many entries as you want in one block. You attach the block to the chain, and the chain gets replicated in all the nodes. Every time a new block is inserted, all the nodes do an audit. All the nodes will check whether that block is valid, if the whole chain itself is valid. Only when these two conditions happen, then the block is accepted and the chain is replicated. So far so good? So this means that every time you make one transaction, all the peers audit. Only if it's valid is the transaction entered. And this happens by the seconds. So it's tamper resistant. Yeah, so that brings up a good point. So the ledger is tamper proof, but fraud can still happen because fraud takes many different forms. Correct? There are public blockchains and there are private blockchains. All the public blockchains today are related to cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and all that. Private blockchains are just beginning to happen, and the latest one is a logistics blockchain in which the transactions are not financial transactions, but they are logistics transactions. All right, that means when a cargo changes hands, when inventory is deducted from one side and increased in another side, when the goods have changed ownership, these are all blockchain transactions. Okay, so that's private blockchain. So if World Vision wants to apply blockchain in various different areas of your operations, you can have your own private blockchain. Okay. Now, this is very important, so I'll read out all the points for you. Because the blockchain should not be used in every application, only some, where the trust is critical. So the blockchain is best used when you have a community of trust. Community. You could have an ecosystem of companies, or you could have an ecosystem of farmers, purchasers of raw materials, distributors. That is a community of trust. Second, when you need trust in the community, that means when you and I need to trust the community. So that if you are a consumer and you only want to buy organic oranges, you need to trust the community that is producing that orange for you. That could be farmers, that could be the people who buy from the farmers, that could be the people who distribute the oranges. So that's a community. You as a consumer, you want to trust the community. Correct? That is a good area to use a blockchain. Third, when you need an immutable ledger, ledger that can never change, tamper-proof, rock solid, mathematically, cryptographically, you can't change that. Fourthly, when the ledger is resilient. Now, what does that mean? Today, if somebody massively hacks into Citibank, and they know that Citibank's account information is replicated in 3 places, and they hack all 3, then they steal your money and the whole system collapses. Because it's centralized, correct? It's centralized in Citibank's servers. So if hackers make a determined attack on Citibank, they can steal your money. Or, and this has happened in several countries, including Singapore, where a really bright spark who works in the IT department of the bank starts stealing 1 cent from every account every month. Do you notice that your bank statement is missing 1 cent? No. Nobody does. But this guy, he wrote a program that steals 1 cent from every account every month. And he made millions but he was caught. The audit department was good. So, if you need an immutable and resilient ledger, a ledger that exists in thousands of computers, this is a job for blockchain. So these are the 4 very good factors that determine whether you should or you should not use a blockchain. So now, you as auditors in World Vision, if some of the other colleagues that you have in other groups want to use blockchain for something, you now have in your minds the key factors of a blockchain. Isn't that cool? You are now going to be more advanced than everybody else. All right. Okay, the next thing I need to see happen in the last 9 minutes is this. Now, I like you guys to work together in groups of 4 around your tables. Spend 5 minutes discussing how can World Vision use blockchain. All right? Have a 5-minute discussion right now, and I'll randomly pick some of you to talk about that.
How expensive is it to use this blockchain?
How
expensive is it to install?
Not too expensive. There are various price things. If you use open source, then it is not that expensive. If you use the IBM version, it is more expensive but more resilient. So you're looking at maybe a maintenance that goes from $100K a year to $1 million a year.
Mr. Chris,
Yes.
the blockchain does work like Wall Street. I mean, like public enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if today I want to buy 1 Bitcoin, can I tomorrow or every time sell it?
Okay. You're talking about Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Bitcoin, remember, is just one type of blockchain. Okay. So blockchain can be used in many other logistics, farming, and all that, and not just the Bitcoin. So if you're talking about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, then the answer is, to your question, is yes. Because the whole chain is not owned by one organization. It sits on millions. So you can buy a Bitcoin, put it in your Bitcoin wallet, exchange it for US dollars in any of the 20 over exchanges in the world today. You can do that right now. Yes.
So, a couple questions.
Sure.
So one, even if we were to implement blockchain within World Vision, the first question is, from an IT operations standpoint, what are the skills necessary to properly maintain or run a blockchain if we wanted to have certain expertise in-house? And then the second question is for auditors, what are those skills necessary to be able to audit a blockchain?
Very good question. IT! All the IT guys! The IT guys will need to understand the inner workings of a blockchain. Does that require them to learn new programming languages? Not necessary. If you know Java, you know C, you're fine. That's one. Two, you need to understand peer-to-peer technologies, meaning servers, IP addresses, copying of files, synchronization. That is what you need to know. Apart from that, there's nothing new that you need to learn except how blockchains work. Now, from the auditor's point of view, now that you have some idea of how blockchains work, I think the most important part was the understanding of that video that I showed, because it exactly teaches you what goes into a block. Do you need to know anything else? My answer is no. That's all you need to know. All right, that's all you need to know. Yes.
What's the cost of losing the person who inputs, actually the data?
Okay. All right. So the software applications that inserts data into the chain is easily built. Any outsourcing or internal programmer can easily make a screen with the fields for you to key in the data. All they need to do is to make sure that they call a function that inserts the transaction into the ledger. That's all. No magic around that. It's the machinery, the blockchain mathematics that keeps it from being tamper-proof. But the applications and all that, easily done. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so far,
Yeah.
there's definitely bug within that blockchain. I mean, one quick thing that comes to my mind
Yeah.
is that because it's going to be synchronized across different computers globally,
Yes.
obviously depending on internet connections.
Yes.
What if you got everything signed, checked on your computer, but wanted to synchronize, you lost connection on the way because of the bigger data that you have there, and you've got different hash number, keys numbers, and I'm not sure, say, connection problem in the middle of the way, and then,
Okay.
what could...
Very good question. So the question is, if one or more servers lose internet connectivity, what happens? All right, that's the question. So the answer to that is, if you have many nodes synchronizing the chain and a few of them lose connection, that is perfectly fine. Because those nodes that disappear can still do the transactions into your chain. It's just that your chain that time is not yet validated. The moment it wakes up, it will synchronize, and if the other machine detect that your chain is invalid for some reason, then they'll override your chain. Okay? So it wakes up. Yes, sir.
Just a little bit of understanding about the Bitcoin.
Sure.
What is the underlying value? If you buy it,
Okay.
what are you buying?
All right. I often get that question. And my answer is, how do you value milk? In some countries, milk is more expensive. In other countries, milk is less expensive. I like New Zealand milk. And I pay a lot of money for that. So the answer to your question is, it depends on what you value it. It's really an arbitrary value. Very arbitrary. If I say my Bitcoin is $10 US, tomorrow we'll say, no, mine is worth 11. And then you throw that into the global population, it kind of, at some point, settles to a value that everybody agrees on. But if we'll say, no, my Bitcoin is $6,000 US and nobody believes in him, then nobody will buy from him. Nobody will sell to him. Everybody wants to sell to him, but nobody will buy from him. So it really depends on the global population. And if you think a little bit more, that's exactly the same as the US dollar or the euros. Think about it. What is the value of a US dollar? The value of a US dollar is what everybody else wants to value it, right? If tomorrow everybody values it higher, it goes up. If tomorrow everybody values it lower, it goes down. Same for Bitcoin. Exactly the same. The value is what you attach to it, just like milk. Yes.
You started by saying that used in a community of trust and trust in the community. You use the word trust quite often.
Yes.
But the person who gave this white paper it cannot be found. And where is the trust?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Oh, wow. I don't know. He could be the greatest hacker in town. He has a backdoor to all this. I don't know. Yeah, I tend to wonder that sometimes as well. But he cannot be found. Nobody knows who he is, or whether it's even one person or many people. We don't know. But at least the mechanisms behind the blockchain is published as a white paper. It is reviewed by all the academics. It is reviewed by many other intelligent people in the world. Chances are we know what's in there. And that is why that paper gave rise to not just Bitcoin, but other companies like Ethereum, Ripple, Litecoin, all of them implementing their own version of the blockchain mechanism. So if World Vision wants to implement a blockchain, you can choose to use the mechanisms from several companies, not just one. Okay. Interesting question. Philosophical as well. Yes.
So kind of related to that, the algorithm that generates the hash, is that known? I mean, other people can
Yes.
review that and see how
Yes.
it works.
The SHA-256 is a known mathematical algorithm. Professors of mathematics can review and certify those.
But was it developed just for blockchain or
No,
already
it was
existed?
not. It was done just after Alan Turing, when he broke, in World War II, he broke the German cryptographic messaging at that time. Yeah, so it's a known entity then. Any other great question? I wanted group discussion, but we ran out of time.
We had a large group discussion.
We had a large group discussion. Since we cannot have that small group, my last question for everybody, or maybe a few of you, what areas can World Vision use blockchain for? Any volunteers? Yes?
Funding.
Funding. That means you can track where the funds come from. How about where it goes?
No,
Where it comes
from.
from.
Coming from, and how we protect the identity.
That's good. Yeah. Okay. Where it comes from and how do we protect the integrity of that? Excellent, actually. You know what? You can even do this, that the donors or the funders can themselves use an application into your blockchain. Self-service. Yay. Any other potential use? Anyone?
Why not just for our general ledger?
Why not use for your general ledger? Yes, possible. Procurement. Why would procurement want to use it?
Supply management chain.
Okay, so you can trust your suppliers, the people who deliver. Yeah, pretty much procurement and logistics. Yes, ma'am.
Our country uses a lot of primary data work, so we tend to collect a lot of door-to-door surveys and stuff like that. So to maintain that integrity of that data,
Very good. Very good application, actually. Primary data, demographics data, people data. That you can use the blockchain for. But for that application, you must protect access to the chain as well. Remember the part about hacking your access, right? Last contribution? All right then, thank you everybody. Hope you enjoyed this session.